Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So I had a few requests over the last year or so asking for a method of how to paint an ultramarine. So as I had this marine left over from the previous video where I went over how to paint bolt guns with no paint on, I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to finish him off and go over a method of how to do an ultramarine at the same time. So the first thing that I'm doing is giving the entire marine a coat of Leviathan blue, which is a really nice dark blue contrast paint. I'm not being too fussy about getting it sort of blotchy or pooling in certain places because I'm going to build the colour up afterwards. So any kind of, it doesn't have to be perfectly smooth is the point. You can just kind of slap this on, just get it on there, make sure it's all in all of the recesses and just cover the entire thing. Also, a bit of an apology that this video was meant to be out quite a while ago as a follow-up to the bolt gun one, as I said, but I've been incredibly unwell to the point where I actually ended up in hospital a few weeks ago. So, yeah, everything's got a bit delayed and kind of all my timings have got thrown out. But yeah, I'm making a bit of a recovery, but you might still hear it in my voice. I'm still not quite right, but yeah, we're getting there. Also, I quite enjoyed this process of doing this marine because the thing is that the whole video while I'm filming this, I'm making it up as I go. I record the voice over afterwards, obviously. But yeah, I kind of had a rough idea in my head of how I would go about doing it and what I want it to look like. But yeah, I'm literally making this up as I go. There's no, this is the test that you're seeing. So yeah, I don't know. I think it worked out quite well in the end though. Now, this next step is a roughly 50-50 mix of Macragge blue and Abaddon black, or any black would do. And then I'm sponging that on. It's thinned down quite a lot, and I'm just using a little bit of sponge to kind of just tap that on and start to slowly build the colour up. This is also quite a good way of covering up that sort of blotchiness of the contrast paint as well. But it's quite nice because you end up with lots of sort of variation of colour in there with the different blues and things, and it just starts to build up texture on the armour. And because I wanted to go with quite a beaten up, battered look to kind of match up with the bolt gun that I'd already painted. And yeah, I'm just going over the entire armour like this, just being quite light with it, and just slowly building that up, just to cover up that blotchiness of the contrast paint and just, as I said, to add some texture. And then as the colours are building up, I will then kind of be a bit more selective about where I'm putting them to kind of like simulate the shadows and stuff underneath the armour and have it lighter on top. So the next step is then to do the same thing again, using the stippling and a bit of sponge to add some just pure Macragge blue. And Macragge blue is the sort of the normal classic base coat that you would use to paint ultramarines. And I'm doing the same thing as the previous step, just stippling that on, slowly building it up, adding texture and leaving some of the darker blue showing. But this one is sort of, I'm not going over the entire armour with this. I'm focusing it slightly more towards the raised areas and the bits where the light would catch. But yeah, just slowly allowing that to build up, because obviously the armor at the moment is way too dark for an ultramarine. So this is going to kind of build that color up, brighten everything up, and just kind of get that more classic ultramarine color, but still having some shadowing and everything in the recesses, and just make the color a little bit more dynamic. So yeah, hopefully you can kind of see what I mean here. I'm sort of focusing more towards the top of the shoulder pad rather than underneath. I'm still adding a little bit to the shadowing bits underneath, just to kind of add some colour there, but being quite selective about where this paint is going. And this is kind of the result at the end of that. So yeah, you can start to see that more classic ultramarine colour coming through. I've then gone in with the same Macragge blue, again very thinned down, using a nice fine tip brush just to kind of have a little bit more control about where I'm putting that paint, because I want to kind of add some more of that to the raised areas, especially kind of the focal points around the face and the sort of the top of the shoulder pads and things like that, and just to have a bit more control of it and just to make sure I've got that blue exactly where I want it. You don't necessarily have to do this step if you want to kind of speed things up and be quick, but I just think this is kind of quite a nice way of adding just having a bit more control and just adding that color and making sure it's exactly where I need it. And yeah, this is how he looks when that step was done. So you've got that mid-tone blue on there, starting to look a bit more like an ultramarine now. And to make him look like a proper ultramarine, he's got his chapter symbol on there as well now. I would suggest at this point any decals that you want to add at this point, so you can then start using that Macragge blue to kind of blend those in and just add any kind of, well, I'm just adding scratch marks and a bit of chipping and stuff to that to kind of make sure that that's sort of blended in and still has the same battle damage as the rest of the armor. Yeah, so just, again, just using the same Macragge blue to do that. So, first highlight colour. This is Macragge blue and Calgar blue. Again, roughly 50-50 mix. It's not really an exact science to this. I tend to do more or less 50-50 because it helps me to remember what I've done. And yeah, I'm just adding this with a brush to the sort of the raised areas again, just building that color up. I'm not covering all of the pure Macragge blue entirely, just kind of focusing this more towards the center of the panels and things, or the raised bits of like on the arms or the helmet and things, just to kind of start adding some highlights to it. While we're here, I also wanted to say a massive thank you to all the subscribers for the channel and everyone that's been supporting me. I said I've been a bit quiet the last few weeks on here, so yeah, apologies for that. But yeah, we've got a Discord server now, so if anybody's interested in joining that, I will make sure there's a link in the description. And if you are interested in supporting the channel, we have a YouTube channel membership, which it gets you access to a few more bits and pieces in the Discord server, and there's also a link for Element Games as well. If you're in the UK, if you then use that link to buy something, I get a little bit of a kickback and it helps to support the channel. So no pressure to use any of that, but obviously just watching the videos is more than enough. So thank you so much for your help. And yeah, sorry about that. While I've been doing that little bit of admin there, I've been painting in the first proper highlight, which is just using pure Calgar blue. I'm adding these nice little tippy-tap, scratchy marks as a highlight, not doing kind of proper edge highlighting, but using this to kind of add damage and texture and yeah, a bit of a proper highlight to the armor. So this is just going around all the edges, tapping that paint on, and yeah, slowly starting to build that highlight up. Again, being quite selective about where I'm putting this. I have actually also added this to some of the center of the panels and things as well, and also drawn on some proper scratch marks and things. It all just adds to that sort of battle damage look and adds texture and interest to the armor. Just looks so much more interesting than just kind of a flat blue. So yeah, I'm just building this up quite slowly, being quite selective. It's a lot easier to add more than to take some off if you add too much. So just slowly build this up. And then as a final highlight for the armor, I'm then doing the same thing again, that kind of tappy, scratchy marks, just using rust grey, which is a little bit lighter than the Calgar blue, and just helps to just finish that armor off. I've been quite selective about where this is going though, only on the real most raised points, and just being quite sparing with it, not putting too much on, just enough to kind of just make the armor pop a little bit more, and yeah, just add a little bit more interest. So the next step is then to use Black Legion, which is a black contrast paint, just to fill in all of the black areas, so mainly just really the banding and stuff between the armor panels. I would also do the bolt gun at this point, but obviously that's already been done. I'll make sure there's a link in the description for the tutorial of how to do the bolt gun, so you can kind of go back and check that as well. So at this point, I then went back to the rust grey just to add a little bit more to the armor. As I said, I'm kind of making this up as I go. So yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit more because I don't think the highlight was quite enough. So yeah, just add a little bit more to finish that off. The next step would be the lenses. Now, if you have your own method for painting red lenses, or you want to do something different with the color, then obviously go with that. This is just my sort of go-to method, which is a base coat of Mephiston red, and I've also done that on the Purity Seal as well. And then just to speed things up, before going back to the rest of the lenses, I've put the rest of the Purity Seal in with Steel Legion Drab, because both that area and the red bits are going to be getting a coat with Agrax Earthshade, so it just made sense to do that first. Same again with the pouches and things, any leather bits, they'll be getting some Agrax as a shade, so I'm just putting some Doom Ball Brown on with that for the leather. But again, if you've got your own method for doing leather, then use that. I like using Doom Ball Brown against the blue because it's got a slightly reddy tint, so it kind of contrasts quite nicely against it. And yeah, and then just putting a shade of Agrax Earthshade on that. The lens is I just basically coat the whole thing. The other bits and pieces like the Purity Seal and the pouch and things, I'm just a bit more selective and just do a recess shade with that. So the next step will be just to use a nice bright red to put a line down the center of each lens, and then using the same color to highlight up the purity seal as well. I'm using bold Pyrrole red, which is from Pro Acryl. It's a really nice bright red, actually. It's a Pro Acryl, great paints. I would highly recommend giving them a go if you haven't used them before. But if you are using Citadel, then something like Evil Sun Scarlet would work really well. But any bright red, just to kind of add that highlight for that first highlight color in for the lenses and the purity seal. And then on the purity seal, the paper part, just adding a little bit more of that Steel Legion drab, just to kind of brighten that back up again and bring some of that original colour back, as it got a little bit too darkened down by the Agrax. But again, nothing too fancy there. And then as a final highlight for the lenses, I'm using Wild Rider Red, which is a slightly orangey red colour, almost pinky. And then just putting that again in the centre of the lens, or sort of slightly towards the back of the lens. Just to finish them off. You can go further than this. Sometimes I'll add more oranges and yellows and things into a red lens, but I'm just trying to be quick with this one, so I'm not going too crazy with it. So last step for the lens is just a little dot of pure white at the very back of the lens, just to kind of add that little reflection detail. I'm using bold titanium white from Pro Acryl. Excellent white paint, highly recommended if you don't already have that. But yeah, any pure white will do. I'm then using Wazdaka Red, which is a ridiculous name for a paint, just to give a very quick highlight on the leather bits. It's a kind of a pinky colour, but it works really well on that Doomball brown. Adds a kind of nice aged leather look. I'm not being too crazy with this. It's just a little quick highlight, just enough to kind of pick those highlights out and just add a little bit of interest. But I'm not spending too long on that. Those are literally all of 30 seconds. Same again with the purity seal. A few seconds, just giving it a quick edge highlight using some Karak stone, not spending ages on it, just enough to kind of pick the detail out, and call it a day on those. Don't feel a need to spend too much on that. So next step is to do the metals. First step will be Retributor armor, which is really nice gold from Citadel. I think most people probably have this in their collection. It's such a good paint. But I'm just using that to give a base coat on the shoulder pad trims and the chest aquila. I've just maybe done 2 or 3 really nice thin coats in that, just to get that nice and smooth. And then I'm using, I think this is dark aluminium from Vallejo, which I'm then using to add the silver details. It's a very similar colour to lead belch. So if you had lead belch, just use that. But I kind of prefer that paint because it flows more easily. It's just easier to use. I'm then using a thinned down mix of Dark Oath Flesh, which is a contrast paint, with a little bit of water, just to kind of turn it more into a wash, and then using that on the gold areas. So mainly on the chest aquila, but I've also added a few little patches of it here and there on the gold shoulder pads as well, just kind of add a little bit more interest, a little bit more colour. It adds a kind of pinky, reddy colour to it. It just makes that gold look a bit more, a little bit richer. So yeah, nice little step to add, just a bit more interest. And then giving the gold a quick highlight using Liberator Gold as well, just to kind of bring that shine back. I'm then just giving an all-over wash to the silver metal details using a mix of Contrast Medium and Black Legion. I prefer the finish of this to something like Nuln Oil, but if you do have Nuln Oil, then just use that. It's really just a personal preference of mine. So yeah, just giving that an all-over wash with that, just to kind of darken that metal down and give it a bit of a shading as well. Now, as a final step, just to add a little bit more sort of grime and things onto the armour, I'm using a very, very thinned down mix of Scrag Brown and water, just to drop a few little bits into the recesses. It sort of helps to sort of simulate like a kind of a rusty dirt. it looks quite bright at the moment, but once it dries, it really does darken down. But it's just it contrasts quite nicely against the blue, so it works quite well. I'm mainly adding that into the recessed bits, been quite sparing with it, but I've also kind of added a few little bits onto the flat armor panels as well. It just kind of helps to add a bit of grime and things onto the armor, and just to add just another level of texture and interest to it as well, because we wanted to look nice and battered and yeah, battle worn. So yeah, and that's pretty much the last step, and then it's just going to be about doing the basing, really. So I wanted to go with a kind of like a deserty, sort of Martian sort of base to kind of contrast again with that blue, kind of like an orangey colour. So as a base coat, I'm using Thondia brown, and then this kind of mix of contrast medium and Scrag brown. Again, if you don't have a contrast medium, you could use water, but this just has a nice properties where it kind of acts a little bit more like a contrast paint and kind of splits off and shows just goes more into the recesses. So at this point, I've given the model a spray with some matte varnish, and the next step is to add some rust pigments. So this is just pigment powder. I think this is called Old Rust. I think it's Vallejo. I'm not 100%. I think it is. I will double check. If anybody wants to know, put it in the comments and I'll reply to you. And I'm just giving that all over the base, smashing that in with a brush, and then adding a little bit more to the bottom of the legs, but only maybe going up, say, halfway up the legs. I'm not covering the whole model in this, just a little bit, just to kind of help blend that in, add that dust onto it, make him actually look he's part of the base, and yeah, just helps to kind of add that sort of again that sort of worn, damaged look to the model. And here he is, all finished. I'm actually really pleased with it. I think it came out quite well. As I said, at the beginning, I had a vague idea of kind of how I wanted to go about doing it and what I wanted it to look like, and I needed it to blend in with that bolt gun that had already been done. But I think it worked out quite well. As I said, I was kind of making this up as I was going. So this one is the test. This is the test model, and yeah, I'm quite pleased with it. I think that method would work really well if you wanted to kind of do quite a quick army, or like a kill team or something like that. You think you could get quite a lot done in a relatively short space of time and actually have something that looks, really nice. And I think it looks like it's got more effort put into it than it has, if that makes sense. Anyway, I hope that this has been of some use. Please let me know in the comments. And yeah, I will see you all soon. Thanks so much.